Hello again, folks. Christmas period now, all my stock's in the shops. So I'm replenishing stock, getting ready for next season. Someone asked on one of my YouTube videos what clay I use. It's all stoneware. I use a combination of Valentine's clay. Sometimes I will use a grey white, it's a B17C. There's also a grogged V9 that I use. I like Spencroft stoneware clay, that's pretty good. And sometimes earthstone. If I'm using a black clay, I'll buy earthstone. But it's all stoneware, it's all fired to about 1220. Normal firing schedule. Sometimes I'll use a slower cool down. So that's what I use. Anyway, today I'm going to start making some espressos. I may as well film a few. I've weighed my clay out. I've got a dozen or so bowls, and let's get cracking. These I find harder to make because it's a smaller lump of clay, a bit harder to manage one-handed. Sometimes it can take a couple before you get into the groove. So the first two or three might not be brilliant. This clay I'm using has got a slight grog in it, which means it's a bit stiffer, I guess. No reason other than it's just a little bit cheaper than some of the clay I buy. And I think it's got a slightly higher iron content, which will affect the way the glazes react. Gives you a bit more well, different reaction really. Definitely fiddlier when they're smaller. Now I gauge my depth. If I can get my fingers in there to web the top and my fingers get to the bottom, I know I'm deep enough. Which we are now. Like I say, I can't speak for other potters, but certainly for me, when I first start in the mornings and I decide I'm going to make a certain thing, it can take two or three throws before you get into the swing of it. And for me, I don't use calipers or anything like that. I know I probably should, but to my mind, if I've weighed it out and it's all roughly the same weight, then I know they're going to be roughly the same size. They're never going to be exactly the same, but that's kind of the point with handmade, I think. If you want perfect, go and buy them from a factory. Now my pottery journey, I got into pottery accidentally. I won't go too much into the details, but it was totally by accident. I was given an opportunity to have a go, and sort of fell in love with it really. I've never been creative before. I'm not the type of bloke that can draw or paint or anything like that. Not very hands-on, so this comes as a surprise to me. And every time I make something, I get a kick out of it. I love watching other pottery videos on YouTube. What I find frustrating, the techniques they show you are all aimed at the two-handed potter. So as much as I'd love to use some of those techniques, it's just physically impossible. Which is why I do what I do, and you see me doing the things I do. It's sort of what I've learned over the years as to what works for me. But people seem to like what I make, so it's all good. And when I started out, I only had the one kiln. I had a little road kiln, 43 litres capacity. I remember the first time I had to fire it on my own. I was a very nervous man. I quickly outgrew that kiln, but couldn't quite afford a new kiln at the time because they're blooming expensive. So we found a second-hand kiln that was going for about 250 quid, I think. The lid was a bit rusty, it looked a bit tatty, but it seemed to work. So I bought it, probably spent another 500 quid getting it right. And hold on. All of a sudden that increased my capacity for firing. And I've eventually worked up, I've got a Scott kiln, which is a very good kiln, very good capacity. So I've now got 3 kilns in my little workshop. The road hardly gets used, but you don't sell kilns, you kind of tend to keep a hold of them, because you never know when you'll need it. In theory it's my test kiln and I should use it more for testing glazes, but I'm a bit impatient that way, and what I tend to do, which is a crazy way of doing it, is I'll experiment on stuff I've made for the shops and hope that it works. It's a stupid way of doing it, I know, but it's something I've always done. And sometimes it actually works. Now for these espresso cups, I think I've weighed out the clay and it's between 290 and 340 grams, I think. So there will be some discrepancy, but they'll be roughly the same. Yeah, and you'll see some of my cups and bowls maybe can get a wee bit wibbly wobbly at the top. If it's not bad, I tend to leave it as is. If it's really bad, I'll take my needle tool. I'll just cut the bit off. But I can live with that. But yeah, getting back to YouTube videos, when I was looking, trying to find hints and tips, I just couldn't find anything that could help me really. Same with the pottery books, and I've got a raft of them. But when it comes to throwing, the technique they show you is everything is put this hand here and put this hand over here, and you know, obviously it doesn't work for me. So I had to figure out how I could achieve what I wanted to achieve. And there are some forms I'll never be able to make, and I accept that. It's frustrating because there are other things I would like to make. I know the theory, but physically it's just not feasible really. So I make the stuff I can make, keep trying to make the other stuff, and sometimes you get lucky. These wee espresso cups do seem popular. again, I've learned over the years, one-handed, as I can't control that rim with my other hand, in order to stop it flaring all the way out, just slow the wheel right down. Well, this is how I like to spend my days, and this is quite chill. I'm not on a deadline, no one's screaming for stock, so it's just a chilled out throwing session really. Now also the clay when I throw has to be sort of softish. The way I describe it is the clay has to be tacky to the touch sort of thing. I'm trying to think what the consistency would be. I suppose a bit like really heavy dough if you're making bread. If it's too stiff, it can be too hard to centre. Not so much in cups, certainly on bowls it can be. This is going to be too big for an espresso, this one, so we'll turn it into something else. So it's not the end of the world if what you went to make doesn't end up as what you intended. It would be annoying if it happened all the time, but sometimes actually, for me anyway, it's when something comes off the wheel that you didn't originally intend making, but the finished thing is actually nicer than it would have been had you tried to make it, if that makes sense. So I would say just don't get precious about what you're doing. Don't put yourself under too much pressure to make sure everything's blooming perfect, because why strive for perfection? You know, life isn't perfect, is it? So why would you expect anything else to be? ultimately have fun doing it. That's the advice I'd give everybody. If it's not fun, don't do it. Normally I've got rock music playing in the background, but obviously because of videos, YouTube and licenses and stuff, can't do that. You know, if you have any questions for me when I'm posting these vids, I know you want to know, you know, feel free to ask me. I'm not a pottery guru and I do not know everything. In fact, my knowledge base is pretty limited. I don't make my own glazes. Not yet, I'm thinking about it. But my philosophy is simply this. Those guys went to university and studied chemistry, etc. and invested a lot of money, these companies, in perfecting glazes, and they're tested. So who am I to say I can do better? You know, if you find a colour that you like, use it. You know, there's no mystery, I don't think, to glazing. I would like to try a gas kiln at some point. Reduction filing. I know the results are very different, but my electric kilns are easy to operate, and you know what you're getting every time, most of the time. Now, I'm quite lucky also in that my studio I had built, so I moved house last year, and my old house had a garage which I used as a pottery studio, and the house we've moved back to didn't. So I had a studio built in the back garden. Now, it's a small one, it's only 5 metres by, well, maybe 7 metres, is it? 5 metres by 4 metres, so it's compact and bijou, but it's ideal for what I do, and it's mine. There's no rent in it, doesn't cost me anything, it's in my own garden. So yeah, I see that I'm lucky. My overheads, as they say, are minimal, other than what it cost me in electricity and materials. And I make a very modest living. It does get a bit quiet January, February, March, but You get used to that. This one's gone a bit awry, I think, but we'll see. I'll get rid of that one, I think. Sometimes you just got to start again. This will be bigger than an espresso as well. Well, the reason I stand at the wheel rather than sit is simply because when I want to remove a piece off the wheel, well, you've seen how I do it, I can't do that sitting down, and the wheel I need has to have this pan so it comes apart, otherwise I'm buggered. It's an in-betweeny cut, that is. Well, I'll do a couple more that I've got left on the shelf, and then I will crack on and get on with my day. But hopefully you find these videos of interest. As I say, even if it's just something to zone out to for 10-20 minutes. Yeah, that's gone a little bit bigger as well. See what I mean? Sometimes you don't always get what you set out for. And I know there's lots of videos on YouTube of these very clever people who repeat, make the same thing every single time. And that's great, and I envy them. I'm not that guy. I can get close. Right, I think I'll start the camera here, folks. But my shelves are empty, so I've got a lot to do, get them shelves filled up. I won't glaze anything this year. It'll be a case of just making stuff and getting ready for next season. Thanks for watching, everybody. Feel free to drop comments, good or bad, indifferent, doesn't matter to me. Any questions? You want to point out anything? That's all right too. Thanks a lot.